Okay, I am going to get started. I know we've still got a few people logging in, but we'll get things rolling and people will join us as we go. So welcome everybody to the October edition of Exemplify. Really excited today to bring you Emily Simpson and understanding the 4 pillars of wellness. Really awesome topic that we're going to go through today that is great for everybody this applies to, which is always the best kind of topic. So Emily, just for those of you who have not met her, joined SelectPath earlier this year as our education specialist. She works closely with many of our clients, working to educate and empower members on topics including group benefits, group retirement, and the many health and wellness services and initiatives available at SelectPath. Before her time at SelectPath, she worked in the fitness industry, wearing many different hats, and now brings her passion for health and fitness here. So I'm very excited to pass this over to Emily.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you for the introduction, and hello and welcome everyone. So as Mel mentioned, I am the SelectPath Education Specialist. On top of the work I do here at SelectPath, I do also work in the fitness industry as well as the social media space. So I have been a certified personal trainer and nutritionist for the past 6 years. What began as just a small coaching gig, teaching boot camps at my local gym, quickly accelerated into a very passionate and fulfilling career in fitness. So I've had the amazing opportunity to work in the industry in both Canada and Europe, holding different positions in teaching and development, consulting, and of course, coaching. So with that, I spent a lot of my time taking and developing courses and working with some pretty incredible clients. So during the lockdowns, I was able to take a step towards online coaching, which gave me a lot of freedom with my career. And in a funny series of events, I was able to come on board at SelectPath, where I do still get to tackle health and wellness again from a different approach. So today we will be exploring what I believe to be the 4 pillars of wellness. Now, you've probably heard the word wellness being used a lot recently, especially over the course of the last few years. I think now more than ever, people really recognize the importance of their own health. When we discuss wellness, wellness really encompasses 8 mutually interdependent dimensions. So as you can see here, we've got physical, intellectual, emotional, social, spiritual, financial, environmental. And to really understand wellness, we need to understand how these various dimensions are related and may affect one another. I really believe that attention has to be given to all the dimensions, and any kind of neglect towards one over time may adversely affect the others. So for example, if you're not psychologically well, for instance, it's likely that your success in other areas of your life may be impacted as well. Now, they do, however, do not need to be necessarily equally balanced. I think we should all aim instead to strive for our own personal harmony, if you will, that really feels most authentic to us. We naturally have our own priorities and approaches and aspirations and our own views of what it means to live life fully. So making the right choices for your health and well-being can be challenging. And although we know what is good for us and how we can do it and be better, essentially, I know that all the information's out there, but we may not act on it. Or if we do, we may, in time slide back into familiar ways because, human behavior, what we do and how we do it, or whether or not we're going to succeed is influenced by a lot of factors. So that's what we'll be really diving into today. And hopefully I can give you some takeaways to start implementing into your own lifestyle. As mentioned, we'll be focusing on 4 pillars specifically. So today I want to dive a little bit deeper into sleep, into stress management, physical activity, and into nutrition. It's going to be a lot of information. But let's begin with one of the most important, I think, but most overlooked factors of our well-being. So that would be sleep. Sleep plays really an essential role in keeping us healthy, both physically and mentally. There can be quite a few short and long-term effects if you have been deprived of sleep. So short-term problems with sleep deprivation can include symptoms such as impaired memory, moodiness, or less likely to participate in normal activities, and the list extends there. I'm sure we can all relate to a time where we felt a little grumpy because of a poor night's sleep, and it really is the long-term consequences of sleep deprivation and several of those nights that we need to start considering side effects such as increased blood pressure, higher risk of diabetes, heart attacks, heart failure, stroke, increased cortisol levels, a higher risk of depression, and even a higher risk of obesity. Now, this is obviously due to a number of reasons, but on a smaller, more measurable scale, I always found it interesting that a fact that I like to use a lot with my clients is a study that was published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that partial sleep deprivation, or otherwise known as just a bad night's sleep, resulted in individuals eating an average of 400 more calories the following day than compared to if they had a good night's sleep. So even, when we talk about these long-term effects, even on a day-to-day, we can still be influenced in terms of our behaviors and our habits due to a poor night's sleep. Even if you consider yourself a good sleeper, you mix a global pandemic in there and you may be facing some consequences or side effects that you're just not used to. So a study on the impact of COVID on sleep found that nearly 50% of individuals report feeling sleepier than before the lockdowns. Just over 40% found that they are consistently experiencing disrupted sleep. This could be due to the fact that people are drinking more people stay up later than before, and once they're asleep, 30% more people report that they can't stay asleep. This all resulting in upwards of 65% of people reporting that there was a significant impact on their mental health. So we know sleep is important. We know we need it. So today I want to focus on healthy sleep habits, behaviors, and environmental factors that all come together and are known as sleep hygiene. So the first step of sleep hygiene recommendations is going to involve optimizing those environmental factors while you sleep. The goal is to make your bedroom really a place of comfort and relaxation. And though this might seem obvious, it's a little bit overlooked and it can contribute to difficulties getting to sleep and sleeping through the night. So starting with your bed, are your mattresses, are your pillows comfortable? Are you waking up with aches and pains? You're going to want to avoid light disruption. So excessive light exposure can throw off your sleep and your body's natural alarm clock. So here I would recommend blackout curtains over your windows or a sleep mask where that's not possible to block the light and really just prevent it from interfering with your rest. You're going to want to keep noise to a minimum. So if you can't eliminate nearby sources of noise, let's say your bedroom's near a busy street, consider drowning them out with a fan or a white noise machine. If that's not possible, earplugs or headphones are another option to stop any kind of abrasive sounds from bothering you. Room temperature is also a factor to consider. I'm sure we can all relate again to a time where we couldn't get to sleep because we were either too hot or too cold. And the ideal temperature can really be based on the individual and preferences, but most research supports that sleeping in a cooler room that's around 18 degrees Celsius is optimal. And then another holistic approach to better sleep is using aromatherapy. So there are a few scents such as lavender that have been suggested and researched as a natural remedy to treat insomnia and to improve sleep quality. So here someone may use natural essential oils in a diffuser or salts mixed into a warm bath or your shower before bed. And then once you've established that comfortable and relaxing place for your evening, you're now going to want to create a sleep routine. It's much easier to doze off smoothly if you're just at ease and you're relaxed. So activities such as quiet reading, low impact stretching, listening to soothing music or relaxation exercises are all examples of ways to really get into that right frame of mind for sleep. Another suggestion is to have a fixed wake-up time. So I know it's very tempting to want to sleep in as long as we can, but according to the Sleep Foundation, it's close to impossible for our body to get accustomed to a healthy sleep routine if we are constantly waking up at different times. So pick a wake-up time and stick with it, even on the weekends if you can, or other days where you would otherwise be tempted to sleep in. Next, of course, we want to have caution with naps. So if you nap too long or too late in the day, it can throw off your sleep schedule and make it harder to get to sleep when you want to. So a nice fun fact is the best time to nap is shortly after lunch in the early afternoon, and the best nap length is around 20 minutes. And then finally, you're going to want to disconnect from devices. So for those of you who may not know, our screens emit light, right? Specifically blue light. So our body is physiologically wired to respond to the sun, traced back long before we had alarm clocks. So when light hits our eyes, a hormone is released that stimulates us to wake up. And then similarly, when there's a lack of light, melatonin is released, and this promotes sleep. So when those screens are hitting our eyes, we're essentially telling our body to stay awake. So we stay on our phones in bed, we watch TV to get to sleep, but then we wonder why we struggle to get to bed. So reducing that screen time or taking measures to reduce blue light, such as glasses, could do wonders for your sleep routine. In the opposite sense, another tip that I have is that if you struggle to wake up in the morning, or you just are like me and you really hate the sound of an alarm clock, you can purchase light alarm clocks as seen in the picture here. And what these do is they slowly brighten your room as you near your wake up time, so that your body is naturally working with you and releasing those, waking hormones, and not necessarily against you by disrupting a deep sleep via an alarm. And last, what can we do during our day to support better sleep? So we're going to want to monitor caffeinated drinks, of course, as they encourage us to stay awake and alert. Alcohol will impact the quality of our sleep. So I know sometimes we're tempted to help us get to bed, but it does disrupt the quality, not necessarily the quantity. And then smoking has also been associated with a range of sleeping problems, including difficulty falling asleep and fragmented sleep. We have daily exercise, which again, I will touch on later, but that also promotes solid sleep. However, intense exercise too close to bed can hinder your body's ability to settle down. Eating is an interesting factor because if you eat too close to bedtime or too large of a meal, then your efforts to digest the food well can also disrupt your quality of sleep. So I do recommend eating around 2 to 3 hours before bed and limiting any kind of high fat or spicy foods in said meal, as they are harder to digest. If you find that that's not possible, I just recommend sticking to a lighter snack. And then finally, reserving your bed for bed activities. So try not to hang out or do other daily activities like scroll on your laptop or do work from your laptop in bed or anything like that. So I know if you have a comfy bed, it can be tempting to hang out there. However, you're going to want a very strong mental association between your bed and sleeping. Next, let's dive into stress management. So in order to manage stress, we first need to understand really what stress is. And when you experience changes or challenges, what happens is your body produces physical and mental responses. So Melissa touched on in the last Exemplify that we hosted that stress can be both good and bad. So exercise, for example, is good stress on the body. However, too much stress or inability to rest and relax after a period of stress can have some serious side effects. So our body's nervous system controls our heart rate, breathing, vision changes, a number of different reactions. And our built-in stress response, otherwise known as the fight or flight response, really helps our body face stressful situations. So when presented with an immediate stressor, something stressing you out, the body releases hormones such as adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. So cortisol is important to remember because it's also known as the stress hormone. So your heart rate will elevate and blood is directed away from your organs and towards our arms and legs to either get us ready to fight or to run away from whatever is stressing us out. So less energy is expended on functions such as thinking, less energy goes towards your immunity or your immune system, because all of your body's capabilities essentially are being mobilized to respond to this stress instead. So fight or flight is a physiological response that's also been around since the dawn of time. However, our ancestors may have faced trying to hunt or run away from predators or scavenge for food, where in modern times, we're really exposed to stressors that can't necessarily be fixed by fighting or by fleeing. So the stresses of job insecurity, the stresses of a bad economy, marital conflict, and a number of other issues can still activate that fight or flight response. So when this response is chronically activated, so the stressor is not going away, we're constantly in the state of high fight or flight, high stress, these stress hormones remain elevated and people can suffer from extreme decreased immunity, serious medical concerns, not to mention that it can contribute to mental health conditions such as depression, chronic anxiety, and post-traumatic stress or PTSD. So this is why managing, preventing, and healing from stressful situations is so incredibly important. The first step in managing your stress is identifying those sources of stress in your life. So what may seem obvious does often require further reflection. So I'm going to use the example of, let's say, a negative coworker in your workplace. And for the Select Path individuals on the call, I want you to know that I adore you all and that this is just an example. But every time you become stressed by this coworker, I want you to start writing it down or finding another means with your reflections, typing it somewhere safe, but writing down what caused your stress. Make a guess if you're unsure, but if you know for a fact, then write it down. How did it make you feel, both physically, emotionally? How did you act in response? Maybe you acted impulsively, maybe you did something, or maybe you waited and thought on it. What did you do to make yourself feel better after? And what would you do differently? This isn't as straightforward as it sounds, and while it's easy to identify major stressors such as changing jobs or moving or going through a separation, pinpointing the sources of chronic stress can be a little bit more complicated. And it's really easy to overlook or dismiss our own thoughts and feelings and those behaviors that contribute to our everyday stress levels. So these questions are important to understand in our own role in the situation and how we can prevent these situations moving forward, or to handle things differently in a way that's no longer harmful to us. So with this information, we can use the 4 A's of stress relief. The first being avoid. So believe it or not, it is possible to escape some of the minor stressors that tend to trouble people. So for example, if you were to take control of a stress that fills your day by finding ways to make it better, a good example is that if your commute is stressful, let's try making a playlist of music you love or listening to a relaxing podcast to maybe make it more enjoyable. Let's create some distance between you and the thing that causes you stress, or to create healthy boundaries and learn how to say no when necessary. The second A is alter. So you can communicate clearly and let people know your expectations, because that truly can make the world of a difference. So you can respectfully ask someone to alter how they are treating you. You can state your limitations in advance. So for example, I only have 5 minutes to talk. You can accept the stressor. So accepting the situation can ease much of the stress when avoiding and altering doesn't work. So, talking to somebody about how you're feeling, calling a friend, a little vent session, get coffee with a relative, or scheduling an appointment with your therapist. And 4, you can adapt. So changing your standards and expectations of stressful situations can help you cope with stress. So a few examples of how we can just adapt to stressful situations is, maybe if it were a busy personal life after you're done work, maybe choose dinners that are easier to prepare and still make your family happy. Maybe we can start by changing our perspective by asking yourself if the stressor will really matter in 5 years. These are going to be ways that you can adapt. I could talk on these points all day, but the hard and unfortunate truth is that stress is a part of our everyday life. And by practicing these 4 steps, we can really work towards leading a healthier and hopefully happier lifestyle. And then finally, how can we be proactive about this? So before we even encounter something that's stressful, are there ways that we can ease our minds? And the answer is, of course, yes. There are so many ways to be proactive about your mental health, but for the sake of time, I just want to touch on a few. So movement. Again, that's going to be a common theme here, but being active is a great way to improve your mental health. Really, any kind of intentional movement or exercise does have a tremendous impact on our mood and is a really effective tool in coping with stress. It reduces your tiredness, it increases your mental alertness, improves your sleep habits, and gives us that sense of accomplishment that will lead to a positive shift in your mental well-being. You can connect and build connections. So having strong interpersonal relationships is truly crucial for our mental well-being. Social connections help establish our support system, which can lower feelings of anxiousness and depression. It can help us regulate our own emotions and lead to higher self-esteem and empathy. And then really making time for relaxation and fun. So this one's an important one to me. So making sure that you're taking your time off, you're taking your vacation time, to not give up or totally sacrifice the things in your life that you truly enjoy or that bring you happiness. To maybe experiment with meditation or mindfulness practice. And I know meditation and mindfulness can be a bit of an intimidating thing to try at first. I don't have time to sit there with my eyes closed and empty my brain. My brain's never been able to be empty. I've heard it all before, but there are some really good apps that kind of help us work through even very short periods of mindfulness or gratitude practice. So there are apps called Headspace and another one called Calm. And these have guided practices on topics ranging anywhere from gratitude, your children, mindful eating, even power napping, I think is on there. So those would be something that I would recommend. And then another recommendation I have is that to families specifically, or to anybody with a partner or a roommate, is making gratitude practice a part of your everyday. So let's say a part of your family dinner. You all sit around and you say one thing that you were grateful for today or one thing that you learned. And I think it's also a great way to teach your kids gratitude, and it reframes their own mindset, especially after something that happens, and also starts to contribute to that connection factor. So it's a bit of a win-win there. So Those are my top proactive stress management techniques. And one of my favorites, and another overlooked recommendation, is to get outside. So exposure to sunlight is thought to increases the brain's release of our happy hormone called serotonin. So serotonin is associated with boosting our mood and really helping us to feel calm and focused. Decreased sun exposure is associated with a drop in serotonin, so which can lead to feelings of sadness and even depression. So these light-induced effects of serotonin are triggered by sunlight, which is why individuals are more likely to experience this negative mood shift during the winter when the days are shorter. If you guys have heard of seasonal affective depression, then that would be considered a result of lack of sunlight. So one of the most common treatments for seasonal pattern depression is light therapy, or also known as phototherapy. You may have heard of light therapy boxes, which are available for you to have at home or in the office if you're not near a window. And the light from the box will mimic natural sunlight, which will stimulate our brain to make serotonin as if it was authentic and reduce that excess melatonin or anything that's going to contribute us to feeling more drowsy in our day. So not only does the sun boost our serotonin, but when your skin is exposed to sunlight, it makes vitamin D from cholesterol. And because only a few foods contain significant amounts of vitamin D, sun exposure is by far the best natural way to boost vitamin D levels. And as you may know, vitamin D plays a massive role in our body's immune system. And that brings me to our nutrition pillar. So speaking of serotonin, let's stay on the subject, that happiness hormone. Did you know that the bacteria in our gut, in our stomach, manufactures an estimated 90% of our body's supply of serotonin? So our gut and the bacteria within it is responsible for producing hundreds of neurochemicals that our brain uses to regulate basic physiological and mental processes such as learning, memory, and mood. So there is such a strong relationship between your mental health and your gut health and your nutrition. This is why when we discuss the relationship between the different dimensions of wellness, we can also see how something like nutrition has a major role in not only our physical well-being, but our mental and emotional well-being as well. This is another subject that we can go into much greater detail, and a previous Exemplify on the Select Path YouTube specifically outlines the relationship between mood and food. It's a fantastic webinar. So today I want to more so focus on some simple and practical ways that we can improve our nutrition, especially with a busy lifestyle. So first, when I discuss nutrition with clients, I always look at things from a good, a better, and a best approach. So just because we can't wake up tomorrow with what we deem as a perfect dietary routine or lifestyle doesn't mean we can't start making some good choices today. It's also important that we don't overwhelm ourselves with too many changes at once. And also it's really important to me that we enjoy what we're eating, because the truth is if we don't enjoy your lifestyle, in my experience, it makes it very difficult for someone to adhere to it long-term. And sustainability is something that I really value within coaching. So let's first talk about water. So making sure that you're getting enough water. I know we all know that we need it. So without water, we get drowsy, we get headaches, dizzy, our skin begins to age faster, our digestion worsens, and can ultimately impact our kidney health and even our blood pressure. So you can use an online calculator to determine a goal, because you might hear 2, 3, 4 liters of water a day, but this number really does differ depending on things such as your weight, how active you are. If you're like me, every time I work out or even think about working out, I start sweating. So I may need an extra water intake than somebody who maybe doesn't. And also environmental factors. If you live in a warmer climate, you're going to need a little bit more water than somebody that doesn't. I always recommend having a water bottle or a glass of water on you. It's really easy to forget about it when we don't have it in front of us. And in fact, our internal, I'm hungry or I'm thirsty cues are often more subtle than we think, especially when we're maybe only mildly hungry, mildly thirsty. Or what I most commonly see is that we tend to develop the habit of ignoring our body's cues altogether. So if you don't feel thirsty, it's probably because we just have been ignoring those cues for who knows how long. So in one recent study, individuals actually responded appropriately by drinking water when they were thirsty but not hungry only 2% of the time, which I think is really alarming, but also not surprising in my experience. So with this information, especially in the fitness industry, when we discussed, weight management, I found that people tend to be quite dehydrated, and they'll get a cue. They maybe don't register that as, dehydration, and they'll begin snacking on food when they're likely actually just more thirsty. So that's something that I found in my own experience. So a trick I like is if you really struggle with drinking water or keeping track of it, is you can go online, or some stores offer them, but you find those bottles with timestamps on them and you genuinely just hold yourself to them. So at 8 a.m., I know I have to be here, the next hour here. There are even some water bottles that flash and connect to your phone and your devices to remind you to drink. Or, stackable habits. So creating a water routine. So when you wake up, immediately drinking 1 glass. When you get to work, drinking another glass. After any kind of meeting, go and drink another glass, and so forth. Because stacking a habit when you may not have something in your routine already really solidifies that in terms of behavior change. Next, we have protein. So protein is a macronutrient found in a variety of food sources such as meat, eggs, beans, dairy. It's especially crucial as it contributes to muscle mass, it contributes to your strength. It actually causes you to be less hungry, it helps with weight management. It's really good for our skin and bones, contributes to a healthy blood pressure, and the list goes on. A lack of protein in our diet can result in hair loss, poor recovery from injury, dry, flaky skin, brittle nails, poor immune system, feelings of fatigue or irritability, headaches, and again, so forth. So without protein, achieving all those previous health benefits becomes extremely more challenging. And I like to frame it kind of this way. So think of building your muscles and your tissues like you would want to build a new deck for your backyard. So to build your muscles, you need a good supply of protein, similar to you would need planks of wood to build the deck. However, if you don't eat enough protein, your body will begin breaking down tissue from other parts of your body to supply the protein to where it needs to be in that moment. So it's like you were trying to build that deck. So you go to the front yard and you start taking down your front porch to build the deck. But now you need to rebuild the porch. So you can see how important that constant and adequate amount of protein or that new wood or what have you is so crucial. A top tip for ensuring that you get enough protein is to just really try to make it a part of your every meal and every snack. So do you normally have toast for breakfast? Awesome. Can you add an egg? Can you add deli meats? Better yet, make it that breakfast sandwich with both. Do you snack on fruit? Could you add a high protein yogurt or meats and cheese to that snack? These simple and small additions to your day really do go a long way. And when we discuss preparing protein for your meals, I often recommend what I call batch prepping. So cooking a large batch of chicken breast, for example. And then when you're having any kind of meal, it becomes especially easy to just add that protein. So do you want a sandwich? Awesome, add the chicken. Are you feeling like pasta? Great, add the chicken. On salad, add the chicken. We really want to just focus on making things as easy and accessible as possible for you. So with that being said, just making your meals easy. So the whole quote, if you fail to plan, plan to fail, right? So try to go into your week with a plan. A great way to do this that helps reduce stress is to pre-order your groceries beforehand. There's apps such as Instacart that you can plan and budget well. So if you're looking at contributing to your financial wellness, this goes a long way with building healthy financial habits. You can buy vegetables frozen. I really don't find that the nutritional value changes all too much. So I know sometimes I get questions about that. Pre-cut or washed vegetables. You might consider using a meal prep service. There's quite a few ranges, especially locally. It could serve you the meals already made or ones where at least it sends you the ingredients and you can cook yourself. Because often in my experience, the biggest barrier to nutrition is often just time, right? We live in a world of instant gratification where we're all busy and, if you're stressed and shuttling, like say the kids to soccer practice, the last thing on your mind is spending 3 hours building this beautiful meal in the kitchen, right? And often goes to the drive-through where I can grab a meal, prepare in 5 minutes, or even to take out where the meals are going to cost me more than probably my entire grocery trip altogether. So try not to make things harder for yourself and try to really get familiar with these services to make your life a little easier. Now, there's a lot of information out there about food, a lot of incorrect information out there about food, and it can be a very intimidating and very overwhelming. So I wanted to share with you some of my favorite resources to really access this information for yourself. So first, using sharing platforms to find ideas. My absolute favorite and one I recommend is Pinterest. There are a ton of blog posts about, high protein meals, quick and easy snacks, and I do find it the best source for recipes, and it's a very easy to use platform. Of course, I'm always going to recommend working with a professional. That's something I truly believe in, even for myself. So keeping in mind that credibility in education is really important in this era of so much information being out there. So whether it's a dietitian or an experienced life coach or personal trainer that you've looked into, always a great idea. And then a great online tool to learn more about nutrition yourself is Precision Nutrition. So Precision Nutrition is one of the certifications that level 1 is that I gained in my experience. However, they made nutrition such an easy to understand concept. You know, sometimes things, especially as we're talking about chemicals and biology, that can get a little bit harder to interpret, but I found that Precision Nutrition did a really, really great job of providing science-backed nutrition education content, whether it's answering a question of yours, if you're looking for recipes, and all delivered in a very easy to read way. Like I said, it's a very there's a lot of information out there. So some of the articles that I just pulled up right from their homepage, eating too much, you can blame your brain, coffee and your appetite, or 5 significant reasons to lose weight and why the media isn't covering them. Such a wide variety of articles on there. So that would be another tool that I really recommend. And now finally, one of the last pillars of the day. So we have physical activity. So physical activity is an important part of the healthy lifestyle. Again, we know this. So regular healthy activity can help reduce the risk of premature death and chronic diseases such as coronary heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and osteoporosis. Regular physical activity can also improve our overall sense of well-being by improving our fitness levels and ultimately our self-esteem, right? We're going to reduce the effects of stress and increase energy and contribute to a positive mental health. Now, starting any sort of fitness routine, again, can also be very intimidating. Like nutrition, there's a lot of information out there online, and it can be very hard to sort through what is legitimate. Just know that even if you're not active now, adding any amount of physical activity will result in health benefits. So I recommend starting now by just taking that first small step in the right direction, and then slowly increasing your physical activity in time to meet the recommended levels, or what goal you aspire to be at. So how much physical activity should we be getting? Canada's recommendations are 2.5 hours a week, broken into sessions of 10 minutes or more to achieve health benefits. Now, it is recommended that the activity you do is a blend of aerobic activity or more cardio focused, as well as resistance training or movement that focuses on getting stronger. Now, this certainly doesn't have to be in the gym. Try different activities until you find the ones that are right for you. That being said, 2.5 hours a week sounds like it could be a lot, but realistically, if we were physically active for only 25 minutes a day, you would actually exceed this recommended value. So scheduling those 25 minutes or whatever split that works best for you into your routine, remember that as long as it's broken into 10 minutes or more, we are hitting those Canada recommendations. So I say, go to the pool, you can hit the gym, join a spin class, or one of my favorites, especially after the lockdowns, is to do one of the million virtual workouts on YouTube, right? I think for one point in the lockdowns, I was doing, at-home Zumbas or something, and they were fantastic. And so any kind of planned exercise is really what I want to get at, and that you enjoy it. So as a personal trainer, I think often people immediately assume that I want them to just become bodybuilders who are at the gym lifting weights 6 to 7 days a week, but that could be further from the truth. So like nutrition, I really believe that you need to enjoy these activities and that they need to align with your lifestyle and your priorities. So a good example is a client of mine who was the CEO of a local company. He had a loving wife, a 10-year-old son, and probably the most insane schedule that I'd ever seen. He always showed up to his sessions, but always 10 minutes late because he could never make it early because he would just leave his house the moment his last meeting ended, but he did always still make it. There was just very minimal time in his schedule without taking him away from his family. So with that being said, he was making it a part of his day, but also we need to find ways to make fitness a family activity. So it was in the winter months, he began taking his son skiing with him. That was a hobby that he really loved and that he got his son involved with. We started scheduling daily walks with his wife, right? So these are just activities that are just as important to me as lifting weights. So when I look back at his story, what really made him successful here is that he made physical activity a scheduled part of your day. And sometimes when we struggle to do that, we struggle to prioritize ourselves, I try to reframe people's mindset of, imagine your health was your CEO or whoever your boss is, right? Would you just not show up to a meeting with your CEO because you just, didn't feel like it, or I could wait until next week or what have you? And I mean, maybe the answer is yes, but typically I want you to take your health very seriously, right? So have a friend or a partner join you. Another tip is to have that accountability partner, right? Maybe a colleague at work, some kind of fitness challenge to hold yourselves to. You're just going to want to find more ways to move throughout your day. So here at Select Path, we have a walking group at lunch, or sometimes if it's poor weather, we stretch in the boardroom together. Walking to more places, parking further away, spending less time in front of a screen. Or if you're like me and I don't want to sacrifice my Netflix, I have an indoor bike that I park in front of my TV to watch my Netflix and get my physical activity in. And to me, that's a win-win in my routine. I know that progress comes slowly. So in my entire career, the ones or the people that have the best results were not necessarily the people that worked hard for 14 days or 21 days or those 30-day fixes and, eating very minimal food with an insane amount of exercise, right? It was the people who set very realistic expectations for themselves every week. They had a goal and they were consistent. So in the physical activity realm, you may have heard sitting is the new smoking. And I'm saying this as I'm sitting, but I want to share with you some information in this section about posture as well, especially as it pertains to those of us who do sit for long periods in the day and how physical activity can help improve it. So when we are sitting, a few things happen to our bodies, as I'm sure some of us have already felt. So first of all, our large leg muscles, as well as our glute muscles or your butt muscles, will begin to weaken. So these large muscles are incredibly important for walking and for stabilizing you. And if these muscles are weak, you're also more likely to injure yourself from falls or strain yourself when you do exercise. Just like your legs and your glute muscles, your hips and your back will not support you as well when you sit for long periods of time. So sitting can cause your hip flexor muscles to shorten. So this is the area right in front of your pelvis, just above your legs. So when I say shorten, that means tighten, as I'm sure we felt our hips being quite tight, which can lead to problems with that joint and just cause further low back pain. Also, poor posture can cause poor spine health because the compression of the discs in your spine can lead to premature degeneration, which can be very painful. And then if you spend too much time hunched over any kind of keyboard or area, I know I have got some clients in the even kind of dentists or estheticians, right? You're spending a lot of time hunched over. This obviously leads to quite a bit of pain and stiffness in your neck and shoulders. So how do we get from this wrong sitting posture to our correct sitting posture without being reminded 1,000 times a day to just roll your shoulders back? There's a few things. So you can use some ergonomically designed chairs or workstations. Sometimes workplaces will allow you to have access to a consultant for something like this. Otherwise, planning, where's my keyboard? Where should my screen be? How should I be holding things or resting my wrist? These are important in the day-to-day activities there. You can also combat poor posture with resistance training, focusing on your glutes, your core, and your back. So with that being said, if you guys have ever seen a resistance band, or if you see the guy here in the yellow shirt. So when we think and your shoulders are rolled forward like this, what's happening is your back muscles become incredibly lengthened and your chest muscles become pretty tight. So what we need to do is now strengthen those back muscles, pull our shoulders back, and then stretch through your chest. So that strengthening, that resistance training can be done in the office even. So if you have a resistance band, you're going to do a lot of focuses on rows, anything that's going to really strengthen that upper back. In the opposite sense, you're going to want to ease tight muscles or stretch them by focusing on your hip flexors, your shoulders, your neck, and your chest. So again, stretching through your chest, stretching your neck, stretching the front of that pelvis, right? And then if you want to go even further, you can pinpoint them with trigger point release methods or self-massage. So I'm a big advocate for massages. This is a tip that I use a lot with my clients, even in the gym, but as you can see, I have it right at my desk here. You're going to see things marketed as like, you know, a massage ball. You really don't need necessarily like a more expensive massage ball. This is the lacrosse ball, sports ball. You can get packages of them at Sports Check for quite an affordable price. And what you're going to want to do is you can self-massage. You can see here, especially under your feet. That's an amazing spot for people to get and use trigger point methods. You can see somebody using it on their chest. So again, when we're combating that poor posture, even just doing that, I'm feeling it. That's a good way to really just pull ourselves back to where we need to be. So this could be something that you keep in your purse, you keep in your bag, you throw into your desk drawer here. But another one of my favorite methods. And so I just threw a lot of information at you, and I'm really hoping that you've been able to pull, you know, one or two things to try and integrate into your lifestyle. But let's say you begin integrating these new habits and you start to notice results, whether that's emotionally, physically, mentally, or what have you. How do we ensure that these habits are sustainable? How do we make sure that we keep doing them, right? On average, it takes more than 2 months before a new behavior becomes automatic, 66 days to be exact, according to a study conducted in London. And this obviously varies depending on the individual and the circumstances. However, in that study, it took anywhere from 18 days to 254 days for people to form a new habit. So when setting goals for yourself, and that's why I get so cautious of these 7-day cleanses or these 21-day fixes, you know, we need to really focus on setting realistic expectations anywhere from 2 to 8 months, if not more, to successfully build a new behavior into your life. So how do we make it there? How do we get to that golden 66 days, sorry. So I mentioned it already, but having someone to hold you accountable, whether that's a coach, a friend, a colleague, someone there who's going to motivate you and push you even on the days that you don't feel like it. I also recommend tracking your daily habits. So a book that I really love is Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he discusses that if we even just strive to be better by 1% every day, by making these small improvements gradually, we can really expect exponential, massive long-term results. So that's a book I recommend reading. But if you're looking on how we can implement it today, you can try journaling by pen and paper, or I use an app called Dailyo. There are templates for journaling, including templates on how to start practicing gratitude, or there's a free writing component. There are also pre-programmed habits that you can customize to make it your own as well. It also tracks your mood. And then at the end of your week or your month, it will actually generate reports correlating certain habits with your mood. So for example, your happiest days were when you spent time with your loved ones and you worked out. And it's just a great like reaffirming reflection piece and an app that I really love. And also to set a timeline with times, you know, sometimes we say, oh, you know, whenever I want to get results, whenever they come, right? But the reason I say this is because when we have a goal, when we have a date set, we can build momentum, which just aligns our focus and gives us more motivation. It's going to help us measure our progress. So in the fitness industry, you know, maybe I would have a client work towards a photo shoot that showed their progress, or this could look like a vacation or a birthday or really any kind of life event. Once this date has occurred, you want to reflect on your progress, what you're most proud of, maybe if you want to adjust or do anything differently, and then you're going to want to set a new goal. So if you're looking on assistance on how to create and set these goals, I recommend researching and using the SMART method. And there are a ton of online resources and guides that are fantastic that will help you kind of set those specific, measurable, achievable results. And before we end today, I wanted to really revisit these different dimensions of wellness from one of the first slides and really drive home that when we work on these 4 pillars, so our stress management, our physical activity, our nutrition, our sleep, we're going to really start to begin to notice those positive effects that it has on every single aspect of our life. You know, life is very chaotic. It is crazy and it is unpredictable, but, you know, taking control of our wellness doesn't really have to be, right? There is, again, just no one size fits all approach. And we really do have to spend time with ourselves to figure out what that personal harmony is and what feels most authentic to us, and the number of different ways that we can achieve fulfillment in our own lives, And, you know, we hear all the time, your health is an investment, not an expense. But if we don't make time for it now and we ignore your wellness and your well-being, we'll be forced to make time for it in ways that are not so pleasant down the road. So we need to take our health seriously on every level. And I hope that today really reminded you of that. This is a subject that I feel very passionate about. So with that being said, thank you for your time today. I am going to open the floor to some questions. I'll have They'll help facilitate that for me. But if you do have anything to ask about the material today or something that you would like my input on that perhaps I didn't mention, I encourage you to do so now or to reach out to me privately after.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. That was fantastic. Lots of information for everybody to digest, which is always good. So as always, everybody, we will send out the slide deck and the information so that you have it, and the recording from today as well, so that way you have it. But in the meantime, are there any questions for Emily? We do have a little bit of time. And this is where we always do a fun little dance while we wait for them to pop in.
Get that movement.
Right. Right. I'm going to roll my feet at the same time as I do a little dance.
Man, does wonders. Yeah.
So I'll throw a question out there while we give people time to throw anything in the chat if they have anything. So I guess if you were to meet with somebody and, you know, they were struggling in all 4 areas of the pillars, where would you recommend somebody starts?
Okay, so I would probably start with, first we would need to look at, you know, what do your days even look like? You know, it's really hard to make space for things like meal planning and physical activity and sleep if you feel like we don't have the time for it. So what I like to recommend is, and I use this all the time, is, you know, we all have calendars with work or what have you, but start to make even calendars and time slots in your personal life. And no pressure to make it look anything close to your idea of perfect now, but, you know, start allotting, like, how much time am I watching TV? How much time am I spending with the kids at sports, right? When am I going to bed? When am I waking up? And then we can start to really identify what the areas of opportunity even are for you. So first of all, being, you know, if you're waking up at 5 a.m. one day, but then trying to sleep until 11 or 9 the next, right? Then maybe that's something we work on first, right? If we're doing that and we're finding more time in your schedule, you know, maybe you drop the kids off at sports or something like that, is that a time that you can start thinking of meals for the next week? So I would start just looking at your current schedule, try not to make it look anything like what you want it to look like, try to be as realistic with yourself as possible, and then start to highlight maybe where things that you could start changing or doing differently, or identifying maybe this would be a good time to do this.
Awesome. Good. Hey, see, we gave people time. We've got questions now. So first question, and we've got 3, just so you know, so far. So there's a lot of focus out there on cleanses. So is there any real benefit to those or any recommendations that you have around that?
So I feel depending on the type of cleanse, I feel a certain way. I am a big advocate for just trying to find you know, these daily lifestyle habits. Those will, you know, your body has natural processes naturally that will start to bring you back to like a base level. You know, some of the ones that scare me are detox teas. What happens with these detox teas is they actually just act as something that cleans you out. So what happens with that is that, sure, maybe you lose a little bit of weight, you feel like you're, you know, lost inches, when in reality, you're just not retaining any water. You're not retaining any nutrients. So you're almost having adverse effects. And those have actually, there's been quite a few lawsuits, not to scare people, but that have put people in hospitals, right? Because they can be a little bit more dangerous. So those are the ones that I want to avoid. My opinion on juice cleanses, you know, obviously a ton of great nutrients. I think they get very costly because it takes a lot of vegetables to create a certain juice. Also, if you're just doing a liquid diet or something like that, there's sometimes some side effects of how you then digest whole foods after. So there's a lot of information out there. I don't necessarily advocate for starting there. I would just start looking at integrating, how can I get more water? How can I get more vegetables? How can I get more protein? And I promise you the health benefits from that will come as well.
Awesome. Great. So the next question is, so this person says, most of my goals stem from an impulse, like I drank too much, so I don't want to drink the rest of the week. Or I want to be more creative, so I'll make a singular art piece. What are healthy ways to make longer term, oh, it moved, hang on. What are healthy ways to make longer term goals, or how can I set a more positive mindset for longer periods?
Yeah, I actually, so in terms of, we see this a lot, so reactionary extremes after we feel like a bit of guilt about something. So a great example that we see, whether it's maybe necessarily drinking or, oh, I ate so much over Thanksgiving weekend, so now I'm going to eat nothing but salads for the rest of the week, right? Or you want to try to get away from that mindset and really tackle every day to like, what is the best that I can do today? And giving yourself some grace for past habits, right? Life happens. Am I never going to eat a slice of cake at a birthday party again? Absolutely not, right? Like these are things that if it's important to you, it's important to me as a coach. So I would recommend just starting from trying to give yourself a little bit more grace with, things that you deemed as maybe slip ups or what have you. It will help kind of reframe things in a more positive mindset. And then, when it comes to like, I want to be more creative, so I'll make a singular piece of art. When it comes to things like that, towards maybe like more mental health things, I think just prioritizing as we go back into that stress management and making time for fun, making time for creative, instead of absolutely work on your singular art piece, but maybe make sure that that creative time is in your routine weekly or monthly, right? Try not to think of it as like a single objective, but I want to make time for creativity, period. And what comes from that will come from that.
Awesome. So for the 10-minute sessions of activity, should they all be aerobic type movements, or can yoga be counted in for this?
I think any kind of movement is fantastic kind of movement. So I will never, ever complain that somebody does yoga. I actually think that yoga, I know I joked about how much I sweat, but I genuinely I'm working pretty hard. Like your muscles are, even though it's not necessarily tension from a weight being pulled, but every time you brace, every time you move your elbows or brace your core, that is a form of resistance training as well as mobility. So if you're doing yoga, I absolutely think that that's fantastic. Is there an opportunity for maybe more intense exercise not within your yoga, like maybe a brisk walk or something also as a part of your day, potentially? But I think yoga is a fantastic activity to do.
Awesome. So the next question is, I believe in the benefits of meditation and mindfulness as a proactive stress management tool. I'm curious, outside of apps like Calm or Headspace, if you offer any in-person workshops to help people develop those skills, or I would say maybe, do you know of any workshops that would help people develop those?
Yeah. In terms of developing skills, for sure within coaching, but in terms of what's offered out there, there are plenty of in-person workshops as well. I find that in certain types of yoga, some practitioners will prioritize this as well. There are actual legitimate mindfulness classes where they're less focused on yoga as part of a movement with meditation as an added element, but purely times to just sit and get a live coaching practice. So I know that there are some fitness facilities that offer that live. And then as well as, I think another one outside of apps, I do like to recommend podcasts on your way to and from work or something, especially, for example, like if you have a stressful day and you really want to prioritize physical activity, getting a podcast on there to get you out of the stressful day and get you prepared and ready to tackle on like a new kind of positive stress, that would be a good way to start integrating into things that you're already doing, right? So instead of me saying I have to set aside 15 minutes for meditation a day, is that something that you can start doing in your daily commute, in your daily routine when you're brushing your teeth, right? I know we do have, and some people are really gain a lot of benefits from, the sit still and empty your mind, but meditation doesn't always have to look like that. I like to go for walks. I find that really clears my head. So there's many different forms, but workshops are definitely out there for you.
I worked with somebody previously who he did a lot of he worked with like med students, prepping them for exams and doing helping people meditate. Right. And he really looked at it as an everyday activity and just working it into like meditate while you brush your teeth, meditate while you're sitting at your desk for a minute. And he was really big on like 30 to 60 second meditations and almost using that as a reset and trying to encourage people to not get intimidated by the length of time or the stillness that we think equals meditation.
Yeah, and that's what it is, right? I remember I took actually a mindfulness course when I was back in school, and I remember thinking that it was just some course that I could get a high mark in, and it was the hardest course I'd ever done because it was intimidating at first, right? And the constant journaling and reflections, and that wasn't a part of my day. But something that I really took from that was mindful eating practice. You know, we're so busy, we've got 5 minutes to eat our lunch in between meetings, or do we even like it? Are we full? Like, is this something that we're enjoying? Like, are we satisfied? Are we overeating? Are we under eating? So mindful eating is another way to incorporate it.
Awesome. Are there any other questions before we wrap up for today?
Good questions, by the way. Thank you, guys.
Very good questions. Okay. Thinking that might be it, Em.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much, guys. And thank you, Mel.
Thank you. And for everybody who joins us for Exemplify or looking to join us again for Exemplify, our next event is November, just confirming the date, November, it might be the 8th. That seems soon. It's usually the second or third Tuesday. So it's either the 8th or the 15th. We will put that in the email. And we have another special guest coming on, also sort of in this overall physical wellness space. He is going to speak to us about sort of tracking and how to measure what you're doing so that you can use that as motivation as you move through things. So kind of like the motivation and the habit side of that. So that's what Andy is his name. That's what Andy will be talking to us about next month. So that information will be in your email that you get after this recording with all the information from today. So thank you to everybody for joining us today. And hopefully you leave with at least one new habit, and we will all talk soon. So thanks, everybody.